Welcome to the Next Level Human podcast. As a human, you have a job to do. In fact, you have 4 jobs: to earn and manage money, to attain and maintain health and fitness, to build and sustain personal relationships, to find meaning and make a difference. None of these jobs are taught in school, and that is what this podcast is designed to do: to educate us all on living our most fulfilled lives through the mastery of these 4 jobs. I'm your host, Dr. Jade, and I believe we are here living this life for 3 reasons and 3 reasons only: to learn, to teach, and to love. In this podcast, I will be learning, teaching, and loving right along with you. I'm grateful to have your company. Here's to our next level. It's time to talk about one of our sponsors of today's episode, AG1 by Athletic Greens. Now, many of you have heard me say this before, but I am not a fan of vegetables, which I know is funny given I've been in the health and fitness industry for so long. I blame my mother and father for this. When I was a kid, what they would do was essentially take the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, the spinach, the collard greens, and just steam them. No salt, no fat, no taste whatsoever, just these bitter greens. And so I developed a distaste for a lot of different vegetables, which has stayed with me into adulthood. One of the things I've done to mitigate that is use a greens powder pretty much ever since greens powders have come out on the market. And I've tried every single one. They started out tasting like swamp water. I found a few that I really like the taste, but recently, one that I have been taking for a very long time, as you all know, I wear a continuous glucose monitor. I found that it was actually spiking my blood sugar because probably the tapioca starch in it, which some people don't respond to tapioca starch with elevated blood sugars. I was. And so it sent me on a mission to find another one. And one of my friends turned me on to AG1 by Athletic Greens. Now, I've heard about Athletic Greens and AG1 for quite some time. I just never tried it. And now that I have tried it, I have become a huge fan. So much so that I partnered with Athletic Greens and AG1 to sponsor this podcast. Now, let me tell you what happened here. After I saw that my blood sugars were spiking, my friend gave me a couple samples of AG1. I began using those and testing the blood sugar and found there was no spike. The other thing I found is that AG1 is interested in its taste profile. It's very neutral. The one I was taking before was a little sweet. I really loved it. But this one is very neutral, which actually suits me because what I found is I can actually not only take this first thing in the morning in water and have it taste very neutral, almost like there's nothing there. I can also add it into my protein shakes, which means now I'm getting double the greens that I was getting previously because I add this right into my protein shakes and it does not change the flavor of the shake at all. The other thing I realized once I started looking at the label is that this product is not simply a greens product. It also is a multivitamin, multimineral. It also has fiber, which acts as a prebiotic. It has probiotics in it, and it has functional mushrooms, which act as adaptogens in it. That's 4 different products essentially in one. And I've been taking mushrooms for some time. I stopped taking them now because now I have this in my greens. I have also taken my multivitamin and make this my multivitamin. So I'm actually saving money, and this is going to save you money as well. The product AG1 is also NSF certified. And you're going to say, Jade, what does that mean? The National Sanitation Foundation is a foundation that essentially does testing on products to make sure there are no harmful substances, no persistent organic pollutants, no heavy metals. Now, this costs money to do. AG1 and Athletic Greens has spent the money on this. They spend money on making sure that the product that you are getting is good quality without contamination in it. And you might say, well, Jade, isn't this true of all products? And actually, no, it is not. If you ever follow some of the news in this area through consumer labs and other things that do testing on these products, you'll see that many of them will have trace levels of things like mercury and cadmium and lead and things like that in them because they're not doing this testing. So this is an extra piece of insurance for us. The other thing I love about this product that I learned as I was doing my research on it is that this is the 52nd tweak or adjustment they have made to this product in their existence. AG1 has been tweaked 52 times. Now you might say, well, Jade, why would they be doing that? And the reason why is because they continue to improve. We know that science is evolving. We know that it's not just about more nutrients. It's about balanced nutrients. It's about the Goldilocks effect of this. And they are constantly learning, as we all are, and then constantly adjusting their product to taste better, to be more efficient and effective in delivering the nutrients. It acts as an antioxidant. It acts as a multivitamin. It's a prebiotic, a probiotic, and an adaptogen all in one. They have mastered this over several iterations of this particular product. And so I am a huge fan right now of AG1 and Athletic Greens. And I'm hoping that you will check this out. It's time for all of us to reclaim our health and arm our immune system with convenient daily nutrition. And AG1 does that with just one scoop in a cup of water every single day. That is all you need. There is now no longer a need for a million different pills and supplements to look after your health. All you need is this particular one. It really clears the stage to simplify your supplement regime. To make it easy for you, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/next level. That's athleticgreens.com/next level to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Check out AG1. I love it. I know you're going to love it. And I'm so happy that they are on board to sponsor the podcast as well. Thanks so much. Check out AG1, athleticgreens.com/next level. And let's get back to the show.
Jade, you and I have had a lot of conversations about why each of us do or do not want to be in a relationship and why humans in general want to be in relationships. We had a really interesting conversation about this last night. We were like, why are we not just hitting record on this?
I know. We should be like, every time we sit down and talk while you're here, we should be recording it.
It's like hours and hours and hours of data.
and you know, it's funny. It's not just so everyone here. It's not simply because Emily and I think we're saying anything so profound. I think it's just that we're saying things that are so different that it would be interesting if everyone listening right now could be in on the conversation, because it's so not the normal conversation.
And I want to say too, actually, I don't know if we've ever addressed this publicly. You and I have never been involved romantically.
Yep.
And we have no sexual energy between us whatsoever.
Yep. Sibling
energy. You're my brother. And yet we have incredible chemistry. But this is why I think we come at things potentially, again, not necessarily from a way that no one else has ever addressed before, but I think that we do maybe approach an interesting dynamic between the two of us, because you and I agree on a lot of things. We also disagree on some things, and yet we also see each other's points when we do disagree. So it makes for really interesting conversation, even just for the two of us.
Yeah, and I think on this particular conversation, what you listeners, everyone in the conversation will find is that there are some in this one, we tend to be pretty different. And I'm always interested in, because I guess in this regard, I'm more the realist and or pessimist. You're more like the optimist, perhaps.
Although I still have a lot of realism.
Yeah. You're more realist, optimist. I'm probably realist leaning pessimist.
Yeah.
For different ways. But maybe, just sort of, I'll give people my general view on relationships. Then maybe you can, and we'll see if we can reproduce the conversation last night to some degree. Partly, I get a bad rap, I think, from a lot of my friends who really love relationships, because I tend to be the person who is kind of anti, despite the fact that I'm in a relationship with a woman I freaking adore and feel like, there's so much around that I love. That being said, I feel like relationships in general are not what people want them to be and think they are. And so let me tackle both those. Want them to be and think they are. I think what people want is somebody in their lives who is their person. This is a term you use a lot. That's my person, which to me, if you extend that, it means to a large degree, that's my everything. This is my best friend. This is my cuddle buddy. This is the person I rest my head on. This is my lover. This is my support system. This is, and I think it speaks to the fact that people want safety and stability, right? So I go, I don't think relationships are what people want to be, because to me, I go, let's just be real. There is no real safety and stability when you're dealing with some other person. Even if they are your rock, they can still die. So this is what I feel like people think they want a particular thing and they're not looking deeply enough. And this is why you're already getting why I might be the pessimist in this conversation, despite how lovely and beautiful I think it is. I think it's an unrealistic thing, right? So they don't, it's like they think they want this thing and they think it's a particular way, and it's just not. And then the other thing I would say about that is that it's really safety and stability they're seeking. I don't think that relationships are any real guarantee of safety and stability. And the second part of that then goes into my sort of major thrust of this, is that safety and stability is, I would say, not really possible in life in general. And that the degree to which you will feel safe and stable is the degree to which you cultivate resilience, strength, courage, the ability to be alone within yourself. And so this is where I'm coming from. It's not to say that relationships aren't beautiful. It's not to say that we humans aren't built on connection. It's not to say that you learn a ton in relationships, and perhaps the most in romantic relationships. It's just to say that the story I think we tell about relationships is an unrealistic story, and that if you go into relationships with the belief, underlying story and belief, that they're going to solve all your problems and this is going to be your person and your everything, I think you're setting yourself up for failure in two ways. Way one is it could easily end. And way two, even within the relationship, even if they are your quote person, my pet peeve, I don't like that term, but even if they are, and even if they are perfect in every way, and even if they do give you the greatest degree of safety and stability one can have, you still, this relationship is going to go on if you're one of these people who's like, I want this forever thing. And you still have to live your life, learn your lessons, and still come face to face with the difficulties of life. And no one can do that for you. And at the end of your life, you're going to have to die alone. Even if they're there holding your hand, you have to cross whatever it is that we do at death alone. So to me, I just go, why are we continually trying to outsource our sense of worthiness and our sense of growth and all of that to someone else? And so I'll stop there. That's my general view on it, despite the fact that I think it's lovely and one of the more beautiful, if not the most beautiful aspect of being human.
And interestingly, I agree and teach every single thing you just said. So we do actually approach this very similarly. But you asked me last night why I wanted to be in a relationship, because we were talking about how the reasons that most people give for wanting to be in a relationship, and some of the conversations that you have had in particular with people, and not really understanding their viewpoint, but not agreeing with their viewpoint on that. And you asked me why I want to be in a relationship, and I said, and I was like, you need to hear me out on this, because this is not going to go the direction that it is going to sound like I'm taking it. So I'll try to explain this again. I have spent potentially a larger portion of my life alone than a lot of people. Yes, I was in a very long-term relationship as well, but I'm an only child. I spent an enormous amount of my childhood on my own. Even when I was in a long-term relationship, I spent a lot of that on my own. And in the 4 years since that particular long-term relationship, I have spent a lot of time on my own, like far more than ever. And I also really enjoy being alone. I enjoy my alone time. I require my alone time. And yet I have done so much work on myself, like the inner work, over my entire life, but particularly over the last 4 years, especially. You have witnessed me through that in a lot of it. And you have seen how much work I have done. And I have reached a point where I almost sometimes hit levels of a tiny bit of frustration, not sexual frustration. That's not what we're talking about, but frustration in the sense of I can sense so much more in me that I know I may not be able to access without the help of another person in deep romantic relationship with, because humans are wired for connection. Absolutely. And we also heal, and we need to heal on our own, to do our healing work on our own, and continue to do our healing work on our own, no matter who we're with. But also we heal in relationship too. And there are aspects of ourselves that we will not meet until they are mirrored back to us in the context of a relationship. Again, particularly a romantic relationship, because it's much more intimate. It's much more vulnerable. People see sides of us that maybe our just platonic friends would not ever get to meet. So when those aspects of ourselves are presented back to us, we then have a choice as to what we want to do with it, or why this particular thing is coming up, or why this is triggering me. Why am I having this reaction? Why isn't this triggering me? All of these different things that we get to tap into, that there are parts of that I just can't find by myself. Like where I require another human in very close connection to me to be able to point some of that out. And this is where you also want to get involved, obviously, with someone who is growth oriented. To me, that's a very basic requirement for anyone that I end up with. But you have to be willing to do that work. You can't just want a relationship for the sake of filling a void. Wanting a relationship to try and make yourself feel better, to make yourself not lonely. You'll still be fucking lonely. There will still be many moments. The average human feels lonely 48 days per year. And most people hear that statistic and they're actually kind of flabbergasted, because in our loneliness is subjective. So loneliness is only what we make it to be in comparison to how connected we think we should be and where we think we're lacking. But it's a completely subjective experience. Jade, you and I could each spend the exact amount of time alone, and one of us might feel lonely, the other one might not. And it's totally subjective. So we have to get into relationships for the right reasons. And I think that, similar to your point, if we are looking to just outsource aspects of ourselves or hope that we will feel safe or stable with someone, safety and stability, by the way, is still a core foundational element to any healthy relationship for it to thrive. And for each party and for the relational entity to be able to grow and flourish. But that safety and stability still has to come from within. We can't just be putting that into someone else and hoping for the best. And I have lived out moments where the rug was pulled out from under me, where I thought that my safety and stability lay with that other person, and then it was presented to me in very harsh ways that it did not. And that I had to create that from within and to build that foundation within myself to make my relationships stronger as a result, but to know that I always had my own back at the same time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't know if you guys can hear, there's a construction going on downstairs. These mics, though, are very good about blocking out other sounds. So you may not be hearing it at all, but if you do, I apologize about that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, and it's just hard, right? We have this conversation a lot. It's just hard for me not to look underneath all the talk about this and still go, let me see if I can unpack certain things. I still go, you're not going to find safety and stability in a relationship if you haven't found it within yourself to a degree. This to me is one of the core things. So people might be looking for that. And I even think like this idea of like, oh, well, I've had a rough time. I didn't feel safe and stable with my dad. I didn't feel safe and stable with my mom. I didn't feel safe and stable with my siblings. I was bullied, whatever it is that didn't make you feel safe and stable. See, I think what happens is people go, well, that's why I want a relationship. And I go, and that's exactly why you probably shouldn't be in a relationship, because until you can weather the storms of life in a way that allows you to not, feel so torn by outside influence. Because what happens is if that's what you're doing, you're going to get into the relationship, and without you knowing it, you're going to put way too much on your partner. And then that is going to set the relationship up for failure to begin with. And my whole thing is, that quote that I always like to lose: if you see life as a battle, you will find, wars or skirmishes everywhere you go. And if you see life as unstable and unsafe, you're going to go into a relationship and you're going to tend to see it that way, whether it is or not. And then you're going to continue to project that. And the only way you get over that is by doing the hard stuff alone. That's the first thing that I will say there. Now, I agree that relationships are incredibly growth oriented, and I agree we're built for connection. But here's where I'll challenge everyone, and where I tend to challenge you. I don't actually think, even though I do believe they are one of the best types of relationships we can have, and I do believe you can grow in specific ways you can't otherwise because of the intimacy you talk about, I don't think they are required. What I think is required is connection. There's no question about that. We are pack animals in a sense. We absolutely need human connection. It is a mistake in my mind to assume we need romantic connection. There are many people who do amazing things and live amazing lives without romantic connections for many, many reasons. And to me, I like to start there first, because then I just go, if you cannot tell a story of beauty and connection and love and meaning and making a difference by yourself, I'm not so sure you're going to be able to tell that story in any significant way for any consistent amount of time inside a relationship, especially if shit starts going wrong. And to me, the worst fear I would have for anybody is to go into a relationship and experience the kind of thing that you experienced and what I did to my wife that I was married to, that where basically they're living a life thinking things are safe and stable. Meanwhile, there's things going on behind their back, manipulation behind their back, manipulating their reality, and the rug is pulled out from under them. And to me, I'm like, you're setting yourself up for that. And that can happen anyway, because the rug can be pulled out from you. Your husband, wife goes out for a drive, is killed in a car accident, and they're gone. The rug is pulled out from under you. What are you going to do then? And to me, that's ultimately what I am essentially saying here. And I know I'm somewhat repeating myself here, but to me, it's so important. And to me, it continues to be missed. I don't think you need a romantic relationship. I think you need to find safety and stability in yourself. And if you don't, your relationship will suffer regardless. And so to me, now, here's the big question, I suppose. And I think this is what you're pointing to. If I'm in romance, maybe I'm far more likely to find that. And that's the part I just disagree with. I go, you're likely to grow in ways you couldn't grow otherwise, but not in that way. There is no way in my mind. And by the way, this is a conversation. It's just my opinion. This is why I like to talk to Emily, because she'll push back on this perhaps. And maybe all of you listening would be like, I just don't agree with you, Jade. My point is, I've thought about this, but I could absolutely be wrong, but I am pretty damn adamant about it, is that in no way, shape, or form will a romantic relationship ever give you the safety and stability you want, period, end of story. It never can, it never will, in my mind, because that comes from you. And if you don't have it, it will eventually fall apart for you. Now, the argument I think that we could have, and I'm going to hand this over to you, the argument I think we could have is, well, is it possible at all? To me, that's more the argument. Is it even possible to find safety and stability at all? So that, to me, is more of the valid argument. Can it even be found? And then my next level up is, if it's going to be found, it's going to be found with yourself. And my third level argument is never going to be found in a romantic relationship. You're not going to grow to that thing. Now, I do think the struggles of a romantic relationship and getting the rug pulled out from you again and again is the catalyst, as suffering and pain is for most things, to get you there. So I do think romantic relationships are incredibly helpful, perhaps for finding your safety and stability, but only when they end and they're difficult and they blow up in your face, not when they're perfect and safe and stable.
And here's the pessimist.
Yep, exactly.
Let me present Jade the pessimist. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a couple things there. One, and I want to address the safety and stability thing as well. So let's put a pin in that for a quick second. Mm-hmm. First, I'm going to challenge you on the fulfillment piece. because I think that that's something that a lot of people would, if they were here with us, would be challenging you on is the sense of fulfillment. Like, who do you want to come home to at night? Like your work isn't going to keep you warm at night, just to use sort of like the stereotypical cliche. So there's that aspect, because not everyone is as nearly as fulfilled in their work and in the sense of purpose that they live out in their everyday life as you and I are. And you and I both fully recognize and acknowledge and are both incredibly grateful for that element that each of us possess, because it's a privilege. So I know that you and I are very much on the same page about that. So I want to push back on the fulfillment piece and hear from you on that. The other thing that I'm going to present to you is a conversation that you and I have had more than once about how did you phrase it? That you feel that romantic relationships are frequently where most dreams go to die. And I have pushed back on you about that a lot, and I continue to, because I'm like, okay, if there are these aspects of ourselves that we cannot access without romantic relationships to get us there, regardless of which way it comes through, whether it is as pain or whether it is as having the experience of being deeply loved by another human, even if that stays together and continues over the long term into a beautiful relationship that has an enormous amount of longevity and happiness and healthy, fulfilling connection within it, that experience can help to help to build a sense of self. It cannot be the only thing that our sense of self is built upon, but there are elements of us where we need to feel connected in order to have pieces of ourselves recognize that we're like, oh, that's a thing that I can go out into the world and do something with. You are actually a great example of this for me, because before I actually moved into doing this work, you recognized, and not in a romantic way, but you recognized very specific aspects of me that I had not even seen for myself. And you were pointing them out to me, going like, Emily, you're really good at this. Like, you've got this skill, this expertise, whatever. And I didn't even see that for myself until you pointed that out to me. Yes, I realize that particular example is a non-romantic version of, but when we are also loved by someone in a romantic way, that can help to open up even more aspects of us that we may never have met before, that allows us to go deeper into our sense of purpose in the world and with a sense of fulfillment, and to carry that with us to not only go after our dreams, but to actually help create new dreams that we had never even considered or thought of as a possibility before.
I'm sorry to break into the show, but I wanted to take a second to cover one of our sponsors and tell you all about Paleo Valley at paleovalley.com. These are the grass-fed sticks that I tell you all so much about, that all of my friends know I have on hand constantly. They are in my car. They are at my house. I keep them at my sister's home and my parents' house. I have these things everywhere because they are the simplest, most convenient whole foods protein supplement you can get. Almost like carrying around pure protein, low carb protein in your pocket. They also, these Paleo Valley beef sticks are the only 100% grass-fed and grass-finished beef sticks on the market. They use organic spices. They are naturally fermented instead of using nitrates and nitrites that can be a problem in some of these cured meats. And they simply taste fantastic. Check out the original or the jalapeno. Those are my favorites. Please make sure you go over to paleovalley.com and visit. When checking out, use the code NEXTLEVEL for a 15% discount. Remember, our sponsors keep the show going by you giving them your patronage and spending your money on these high quality products. You actually do a few things. One, you're helping to support the podcast. And two, you are helping your health. And three, you are making sure that good quality companies like Paleo Valley can be out there doing their business, changing the world, making the earth better. One of the things you may not know about this is that grass-fed organic and grass-finished beef is doing something that is so utterly important for our environment, actually helping to repopulate the topsoil. A lot of people don't know this, but our topsoil is being extremely depleted, and raising animals, especially cattle, the correct way helps to get that topsoil back. This is one of the reasons why I love Paleo Valley, not to mention it tastes fantastic, but they're one of these companies, like my other sponsors, Cured Nutrition and Organifi, that are doing the right things by the environment. I really appreciate everything they do, and I hope you will check them out. Thanks so much. PaleoValley.com. Use the code NEXTLEVEL. And now back to the show. When you talk about fulfillment, I think that's wrong. I think what you're really talking about is contentment. Contentment and fulfillment are not the same thing in my mind. And again, doesn't mean I'm right, just an opinion. All of us in this conversation, we can check in and be like, well, do I buy what Jade's saying or not? But in my mind, contentment comes from meaning. Fulfillment comes from purpose. So let me break this down really quickly. From my perspective, meaning is what a relationship can give you. It cannot give you purpose. And actually, this goes to the heart of my argument. Meaning is something that is borrowed. I do think it's a requirement for a human. I don't think you can go through life without meaning. I think if you do, you are in for a very rough ride with as tough as life can be. Your children can give you meaning. Your romantic partner can give you meaning. Other people can give you meaning. Your work can give you meaning. Certain experiences can give you meaning, right? And actually, Viktor Frankl, if you ever read his work, Man's Search for Meaning, talks about this, where I disagree, I think, perhaps with Viktor Frankl and many people who have these conversations, is I think they're conflating meaning with purpose. I don't disagree that absolutely we search for it, we need it, it is a requirement for a good life. But I think then we take one step further and we try to conflate meaning with purpose, and it's not the same. Meaning is borrowed. And here's what I mean by that. Your lover can die. Your parents can die. Your kids can die. They can leave. They can betray you. Meaning is contingent upon a particular state of being. It requires a particular environment that you have no real control over. When it's there, you have meaning and you're content. Soon as it's gone, you don't have meaning and you're not content. Now, from my perspective, that's what a relationship is, and it's beautiful and it's important. What I think is, what I'm really saying here is that you can't. That's important. It's beautiful. It matters, and it makes a good life. But that's contentment, and happiness can come out of that. But it's a fleeting thing. It requires things be a particular way. As soon as your lover leaves, you're no longer happy and content. Soon as your parents die, you're no longer happy and content. Soon as your kids leave the house or don't live the life that you want them to live, you're no longer happy and content. If someone dies and you're going through a hard time, it's very difficult to lean on those things to get through. They can make a difference. They can act as support. So that to me is where I think we're talking, and I think there's one level up from that, and that is purpose and fulfillment. Now, purpose is something that we do, we have built within us, we have chosen to give to the world, not get from the world. And so when in relationship, most people who crave relationships are asking, in my mind, now again, this is, you guys can just, tell me if you just completely disagree. But in my mind, most people who crave relationships are people who want from the world. They are trying to get something from the world. Belonging, acceptance, safety, stability, and there is no judgment in that. I want all those things too. But it's something you're being like, world, please give me this, right? I get it. But to me, I go, what is it that I can give to the world? What is it that is my unique nature, my unique skill set, my unique experience, my unique choice that I go, I'll take it on the chin for Team Human. I'm going to give this to the world regardless of what I get, regardless of being acknowledged for it, regardless of being rewarded for it, regardless of any kind of tit for tat. I do this, you do this for me. And then I'm just going to go out in the world and do that. Now, to me, that's fulfillment. At the end of my life, I can look back and be like, I did that. I took it on the chin. I did this. I achieved this. Fulfillment has a level of achievement in it. So I can see that, if you've had, I can see where if in a relationship you can do something with that person that you couldn't do alone, I can see where that starts to cross over a little bit into a sense. And this is actually where I think those kind of relationships, I think, are extremely rare and extremely badass. And in those, I'd be like, if we could all have that, hell yeah. But I think it is very rare. I think most people are just like, give me some safety, stability, acceptance, belonging. Please, world, give me some safety, acceptance, belonging. And I go, how about you take a step back and you go, what is it that I'm really here to do? I'm not here for orgasm and rainbows and cuddles and a roof over my head. I'm here to make a difference to the world. And when I do that, and by the way, if you just look from my perspective, just look around, the people who we admire most in the world, the heroes that everyone points to and says, these are heroes, are not people who were looking to get something from the world. They weren't focused on relationships. They were focused on other people as a whole. They were doing stuff that oftentimes put their lives at risk. They were not out there being like, I'm just going to go home and rest my head on someone's shoulder. There was a lot they gave up there, perhaps even those relationships, right? And they made huge differences for the world, things that I think not only could they be proud of, but we're proud of. And if there is such thing as a God or a collective consciousness, that God or collective consciousness is going to be proud of. Otherwise, to me, relationships start to look, if that's not the context in which you're looking at relationships, to me, they start to look a little self-centered. They start to look a little bit like gimme, gimme, gimme type of thing. Now, the final thing I'll say here before I throw it back to you is the following. Okay, but here's the issue. Because you said the whole title of this, I guess, is, or the question was to me early on, why would you want to be in a relationship? Now, to me, if the why goes to, I want to be in a relationship for growth, this now is very different to me. If I want to be in a relationship, and by the way, there's no judgment here because you're probably going to want both.
Of course.
Right? But I think people always get the first part. Of course, I want safety and stability and give me. And this is what most people conflate with love. They think love is about love me the way I need to be loved, and I'll love you back, and we'll just be safe, and everything will be fine. Well, growth is a situation where you don't actually get what you want because it wouldn't be growth then. It's uncomfortable.
It's painful.
And oftentimes the most growth-oriented relationships are the ones that end. And again, this is the thing, because I think people don't understand what they're actually asking for. To me, the why that we're here, the big question is learn, teach, love. So grow, learn, right? In between learning and teaching, there's the growing part. And to me, I go, if that's why we're here, then a relationship should enhance that. And in that case, that's my why. That's, if you ask me, do you want a relationship, Jade? Hell yes. I would prefer that over not. Depending on the person, but I prefer that over not, and I'm okay with it ending because ultimately I want to grow with my partner. And if I don't have a growth-oriented partner, if I have a safety and stability-oriented partner, me personally, don't want that because I'm not really interested in that. So those are my answers to that. I don't think it's fulfillment at all. I think it's contentment and happiness. And I also think the why, if you're going to get in a relationship, the correct answer for any thing we're doing here is to learn, teach, and grow, and it should be growth oriented, despite the fact that, of course, all of us want safety and stability. And the argument, it's a very good argument that can you grow without safety and stability? We can have that argument, right? So, but I just don't think that you can rely on anyone for safety and stability but yourself.
Well, safety and stability also comes in a variety of different forms. And by the way, I really like your differentiation there between the contentment and the fulfillment, and the degree to which I was speaking about purpose coming from a relationship was not finding purpose in the other person in the relationship. It was that they were a beautiful addition that might help you deepen into your own sense of purpose in whatever it is that you're doing in the world or how you're showing up in the world or whatever. So that was what I meant by that. But safety and stability, this can come in the form of financial. That's often a big one in relationships. It can come in the form of like emotional, psychological safety, which really love can't grow without emotional and psychological safety. It just can't. Then that also could open up an entire conversation around the difference between love versus lust, and like passion and stuff. And there can be love takes time to grow too. And safety and stability are built over time within yourself as well. Whether you're in a relationship or not, you don't just snap your fingers one day and decide that you feel safe and stable from within. Like, that's going to take not only time passing, but what you choose to do with that time. how you choose to utilize it, how you choose to grow from it. And as a result of what you do, with what happens during that time. These are all of the things that are gifts being given to us that can serve as redirection at times, and as opportunities to deepen into a sense of self. And I will also make the argument that a lot of times we will hear on Instagram, therapy, blah, 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 whatever, about that you should be able to validate yourself, that you should be able to source your entire sense of worthiness yourself. And I agree with those, with caveats, like with nuance.
Is that even possible?
Well, this is what I'm going to say, is that we are not robots. We are not like silos. We are interdependent humans who are wired for connection. And sometimes in any relationship, we are all going to require validation from our partners, from our friends, from our loved ones, whoever it is. And that helps to better develop our sense of self and our sense of worthiness. So this is also the argument that is very pro-relationship, because I also think that there are certain elements of that can only be found within the context, not only found, but I really do believe that there are certain aspects or depths of it that can only be found within the context of a healthy, like emphasis on the healthy part, healthy, fulfilling relationship. That there are parts of ourselves, again, it comes back to my main argument about the fact that there are parts of ourselves that we will not likely meet unless we have that given back to us, like reflected back to us in some way. And then you get to decide what to do with it. If you are someone who has such deep sense of unworthiness from within, you can be in a relationship with the best human ever and have them reflecting back to you all these amazing qualities and having them give you like this sense of safety and stability. It won't fucking matter, because if you are hell-bent on not believing it and not feeling that yourself and not creating that for yourself, someone can parrot to you what they want all day long. If you don't believe it and feel it from within, it's not going to make any difference. So that is why, yes, it is very important to build that sense of self from within. And part of that sense of self is helped by being reflected to us and helping us grow through our relationships to others, particularly a romantic relationship. The other thing that I will add to that is that not everyone gets the romantic relationship that they want. And that is the uncomfortable truth that you and I both know deeply and that you and I agree on. But this is not the conversation that most relationship coaches are having. This is not what therapists want to say out loud. This is not
and why
what anybody wants to talk about.
Why should they get it?
Yeah. And exactly. But not everyone gets the romantic relationship that they want. And that isn't, I don't think that there's a lot of ways that we can necessarily predict that for certain individuals, because then that could turn into a conversation of deserving. I know how you feel about deserving, so we can talk about that too if you want. That sure, like we could argue that everybody in the world deserves a relationship. What does deserve even mean? That's like a whole conversation in and of itself. But deserving does not equal getting. And sometimes people are not going to get that relationship. So that does bring it back to the self. How are we going to build the relationship with ourself? How are we going to create that sense of safety and stability from within? And I know you and I both feel that way. Like, yes, it does still have to come from within. And I still think that there are elements of us that we may not access without these romantic relationships in our lives at some point or another.
I want to jump in real quick and tell you about one of my favorite new products. And to start out, I want to ask you a question. If you had to follow your friends around who are not the healthiest in the world and see what they are doing, what would be the number one thing you would probably tell them to do to start? For most people, that's going to be drinking more water, right? This is something that we talk about all the time in health and fitness. It's almost as if we think of it as an afterthought now, because obviously water is so crucial. However, we oftentimes get this wrong. For example, did you know that when it comes to hydration, just drinking water can make things worse. Most people don't know this. Why? Partly because most people are over drinking water and under consuming the electrolytes that help water do its job. What we don't realize is that hydration is not just about water. It's about electrolytes, the minerals in there, as well as getting that water into the cells. And so you do not want to be over consuming water if you're not getting your electrolytes right. And this opens up a whole new discussion because most people are not getting their electrolytes right. For example, did you know that low sodium, too low sodium, is an issue? Just as much, if not more so, than high sodium. In other words, what we want if we're going to get the right electrolytes is to get the right amount of sodium and potassium and magnesium in the Goldilocks zone. We don't want too much. We don't want too little. We want it just right. This opens up a whole other thing here too, because people who are exercising, doing sauna therapies, doing low carb diets are disrupting and losing lots and lots of their electrolytes. For example, when insulin is not around in low carb diets, you will excrete lots of sodium. In other words, under that state, exercising, low carb diets, all these things, you actually need more sodium. And so if you're somebody who's been just drinking water, not paying attention to electrolytes, and also feeling fatigued, feeling like you're underperforming, not sleeping right, getting cramps, twitches, headaches, any of these things, then you are probably dealing with an electrolyte issue. This is where the product Element comes in. This product has been a game changer for me and many of my patients and clients. This is a rehydration electrolyte beverage, basically. It is a powder of electrolytes formulated with 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams magnesium without the added sugar and other nonsense that comes in beverages like Gatorade. This stuff is basically a rehydration beverage on steroids. It is the thing that is going to replenish your electrolytes in the right ratios, decrease fatigue, really correct chronic dehydration. And by the way, many people are dehydrating themselves, becoming hyponatremic, low sodium, when they're consuming too much water. You need your electrolytes on board, especially if you are someone who is losing lots of sodium and other electrolytes through low carb diets and lots of exercise. This is where Element comes in. Element is a new sponsor to the Next Level Human podcast. I cannot recommend this product enough. I have been using this stuff for months now, and I have immediately seen changes in my energy levels. I feel like I'm operating on a whole other level, and I have seen this as being the primary thing that people who have been using Element have been telling me, that their fatigue is getting better, especially fatigue that comes after very intense workouts that involve lots of sweating and lots of intense output from the nervous system. Please check out Element. Use the code NEXTLEVEL, drinkelement.com. That's drinklmnt.com. Drinkelement.com, and let's get back to the show. And I would say that, again, I mean, you and I have these subtle differences, but this is a place that we'll probably likely always sort of disagree. And I think most people are going to side with you because this is like, that's the more cultural. But I go like this. I'll reframe it. I agree in a sense. I just don't think it's romantic. I think it's intimate relationship. I don't think, because I'm like, okay, so what's the only difference in a romantic relationship is that you're having physical, intimate contact. You know, it's a sex relationship. Now, I think what you're pointing to is you're essentially pointing to there's something that happens in that with security issues and everything else that no one else would see, that you can only grow in that particular way. And that's perhaps correct. But I think it really comes down to an intimacy type of relationship. For example, we're not intimate. I'm glad you pointed that out in the beginning because it speaks to this. Yet you have said to me, and you just said here, that you've gotten aspects from me in terms of my belief in you, the fact that I see your power, the fact that I believe in your dreams, the fact that I would support you in those dreams. You've gotten aspects for me, and that connection, that's a level of intimacy. That's not sexual necessarily. So to me, again, I go, we conflate these things. Intimate relationships, I would agree, absolutely. Sexual, romantic relationships, I would say not necessarily. That's the first thing I say. The other thing I would say is even if, and again, this goes to even if that is the case, which it may be, right? Like from my perspective, I don't know. Like maybe you're absolutely right about that. Something just feels wrong about it. But to me, I go, even if that's the case, then to me, I go, a lot of those lessons I've already gotten. I feel like I'm good with them, right? Like because of the romance, because of the insecurity, because of times where I have been so needy and so, trying to get people's attention, and other times where I figured out I'm too aloof and I'm too freedom oriented and I'm not connecting. And like a lot of those lessons now, I'm like, I don't know that I really need to rehash any of those. Now, I can't know for sure if there's going to be things that come up. So what I'm, in romance again, but what I'm getting at is that, okay, so even if that is true, because here's the story, meet my person, live happily ever after. And I go, okay, so let's say that what you're saying is true. Is it necessary that you live forever with this person? Again, I just go, these are just all stories to feel safe and secure, which, by the way, is 100% all of us want that. My whole thing is that once you get out of that story, you can see there are many other ways to feel safe and secure other than in a romantic relationship. And that, yes, romantic relationships that you've had and ended, I actually think are the best teachers, not necessarily the ones you are in always. Like those are the ones that set the stage. Because in the end, what helps us get safe and secure and worthy and question and change is pain and suffering and discomfort. And so I guess my main argument is not about relationships really at all. It's the fact that people want to get in a relationship and just ask ourselves the question. I have been here too in my life. What you're really saying when you think about this is, someone's sitting on the couch with you with your head on their lap and they're petting your head and you're just like, this is my home. I feel like at home here. That's really what it is. And of course, that's beautiful. Who would not want that? The fact is that life might not have that in store for you, and that might not be your lesson. And to me, I'm all about telling the right stories. Some of the happiest people I know do not have relationships and died alone in their 80s or 90s. And some of the happiest people I know have been in relationships and then their partner died and they died happy in their 80s and 90s. And some of the happiest people I know have had relationships. So I just go, I don't see that the relationship has anything to do with it. Something about the life that person lived and the growth they had got them to this transcendent state. To me, I see it as a cherry on top. You need the sundae. I don't think you need the cherry on top. And I think that's what people perhaps miss. Now, I think an argument could be made that, having the cherry at one point to understand what it's about and to have the experience of it and to grow from it might be a requirement. But then I ask myself, what about people who are born in wheelchairs and have no sexual, no romantic ability, no ability to connect with people on that? They're still going to have intimacy. They're still going to, and they're still going to grow, and they're still going to live amazing lives. So when I think about stuff like this, I go, yeah, it doesn't make sense, because I just go, what about all the people who cannot experience life in that way? Many of those people, live arguably happier lives. Maybe we could say many of them live more difficult lives. But again, I just go, it's sort of like this whole thing, like, aren't we lucky that we even get to talk about a place where we get to have relations? Some people never even get to experience that stuff and live happy lives. So how can it be so important if that's the case?
Well, and I agree with you about the cherry on top part too. Like, despite everything else that I've said, I agree with you about it being like the cherry on top. Like, how can you create a beautiful, fulfilling life for yourself without that necessarily? And then that can become a beautiful addition as opposed to the filling of a void. So I absolutely agree with that about the being like the cherry on top. I also think that that you haven't made this point yet here, but you have made this point to me before about that some people orient more towards wanting romantic relationships. And the intimacy, in regards to the intimacy piece, I think that ultimately the main root of the issue is that most people do not have intimacy in their lives, period. Most people are going through life incredibly lonely, disconnected from others, from sense of self. They don't know how or to connect with other people. They don't have the right people coming into their lives to connect with. They don't know how to communicate. There are so many different aspects of this where we are suffering collectively from a lack of intimacy. But then we put the romantic relationship up on the pedestal of like, oh, well, that must be the thing.
This is my point that
you're
making right now.
And I agree with you. I completely agree with you about this, that we can pedestalize that. I am coming from a place as someone who has many intimate relationships with many people that are not physically intimate, but I have very deeply connected, intimate relationships, including with you, not physical. And I get so much from each one of them. And I hope that I give back as much as I receive. And I still want the cherry on top. And I believe that I'm allowed to have that, like that can be part of my life, that it doesn't have to be an either or, because I think a lot of people also end up in situations where it feels like I can have the great career, but I can't then also have the great relationship, that I can't necessarily have both. And I am very much a strong believer. Lots of people will disagree with me on this. You have disagreed with me on this, that we can have all of it. It doesn't mean that we will, but I think that we can. I think that the possibility is available, at least to some people, that if that's what you want, that might be a possibility for you. Doesn't mean you'll get it, but it means that it is reasonable that you could potentially have it.
Yeah, in the same way that it was possible, perhaps at one point, that I could be Tom Brady, an NFL superstar. The fact, it's possible.
Yeah.
And some people have it. I just think it's fairly lucky. And I do think, I'm a realist. This is the realist part of me that goes, we set our tasks. At some point, you have to kind of go, I'm not going to be a superstar singer. I love music. Maybe I'll end up teaching music, but I'm not going to be Mariah Carey or someone like that. And I think this isn't a point with relationship. But I will say this, and this is where you'll see some of the optimist side of me come out. I look at it like this. You said something very important. I go, everyone and anyone I talk to, I would say, what is it that you want? And if you tell me that I want a deep, loving, romantic relationship, I'm fully in support of that. As a matter of fact, I think I can think of few more beautiful things than that kind of relationship, to be honest with you, right? It's just beautiful. And I also think in the same way some people go, I want money in a business I could call my own. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think those things take a lot of work. And I do think there are people out there who can do the work in all areas and, their life looks like that. I do tend to think, perhaps very wrongly, but I do tend to think that in life, if you're not focused, you're fucked. And certain things take a lot of focus to build. And there are gives and takes. And there are things you might have to give up if you want certain other things. But certainly for me, I look at romantic relationships like that. I look at it like prioritize, like to me, I go, absolutely, this can be and is beautiful. And if you could have it, why wouldn't you want it? I would want it, right? Like everyone would want it. Like if we could have that, I guess I just go, where are my priorities? What do I want more? What I want more, what I want most is to grow and get the lessons I need, even if those are painful. And even if it means I don't get to have romance, I'm more attached to that than this romantic relationship. I also sort of go to this place where I'm like, I want to do something for the world. And the degree to which me being in a romantic relationship makes that more likely is the degree to which I crave a romantic relationship. The degree to which a romantic relationship would make that less likely is a degree to which I would not want one or discourage people from doing it. And this is my comment about, relationships are often the place where dreams go to die. I don't mean that in a negative way. And by the way, there's no judgment. Life is hard. There is zero judgment on this from my perspective. Like, I see why people go into relationships and just want to cuddle up there. I'm just not that kind of person. And I also feel like at the end of our lives, most of us, I believe, I could be completely wrong about this, I think most of us are going to feel more fulfilled if we lived lives on our terms, found out what we were capable of alone and or with someone, were challenged in ways, rose to the occasion. I really do think most people, maybe that's just Jade. But and that's what I mean when I say relationships are the place that a lot of dreams go to die, because I think life is tough, and some people, most people, I believe, I could be completely wrong, simply go, I'll take the relationship, I'll take the contentment and meaning, I won't take the purpose and fulfillment, I'll take the contentment and meaning, and that's going to be my life, and I'm going to love that. And to me, I go, cool. There's zero judgment. In fact, I'm kind of jealous of you in a way, because it's beautiful. Like, it's just that own it then and realize, what actually you're doing. I'm the kind of person who just goes, let's focus on what's really happening here. Because to me, the problem is culture has said to us, we write stories. We are all brainwashed to some degree. The books we read, the stories we hear, all the things. And my only thing is just question. Just have a deep question about this relationship stuff. So you don't wake up at 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 and be like, what the fuck did I just do with my life? That's all I'm really saying. Other than that, I'm like, hell yes, it's amazing. It's beautiful. But also I'm thinking about all the people who might be listening to this, that they're asexual, or they don't have sexual function, or it's just not something that's available to them. I mean, think about these incel guys who are these involuntary celibates who are putting relationships at a place in their lives where they're so anxiety ridden about it. Now they just hate women. And I just go, that's a lot of energy to be using base level behavior and being destructive in the world when these guys probably have something when they're at their next level human self. I refuse to believe as destructive and dysfunctional and dangerous as these people are, I refuse to believe, and if any of them are listening to this, I mean, I hope they see that they are capable of something beautiful and powerful in the world. And whether they have a romantic partner ever or not, they can do something gorgeous for the world, or they can just be assholes and hate people just because that story that they told themselves that they have to have that. And this goes into conversations about men, but I think that's where I would essentially leave this from my perspective. I don't know what you want to finish up with there, if you want to keep going, because we could go on and on with this, but I guess just to say, I think it's beautiful too. I think if you want it, I want you to have it. And I think it can be incredibly beautiful. I just want humans to realize that fulfillment and joy and purpose don't come out of relationships. They can come, they don't
always come out of relationships. I think that they can.
Yeah, I think that's the part where I need a lot of. I don't think the relationship ever is the source of it, ever. I think it certainly can make it more likely as a potential support system. I don't think it ever is the source of it.
Well, I think you actually phrased it better there, because yes, I think ultimately my main point is that it can nourish us in such a way that it can actually help us deepen into our sense of purpose and everything else.
No question.
But I also really do believe that if we were meant to go through life suffering all the time, all humans will suffer. But if we were meant to go through life suffering all the time, there would not be so much beauty in the world. And that we do still need to approach things with a critical lens in everything that we do, to really dig into what are the stories that I'm holding about this? What are the beliefs that I'm holding? What are the assumptions that I'm buying into that may not necessarily fit me? And a lot of people I talk to, myself included, sort of fell a little bit into the trap of the white picket fence life and well, this is just what you do. Like you graduate high school, you go to school, you get a job, you find the person, do the white picket fence life, the 2 kids, the minivan, whatever. And I just want to extend the option to people to challenge that. And there is a lot more of that happening. People are stepping into different types of lifestyles and being much more accepting of both finding and creating something that actually works for them and actually feels good to them, as opposed to feeling like they need something. Because I think you're right. A lot of people want a relationship because they assume that that's what they should have, or what they should want, or they're being pressured every time they go home to family to visit. It's like, why don't you have a boyfriend yet? Like, if it's those types of things, and that can be hard to resist. We kind of get taught that peer pressure ends in high school. Peer pressure does not end in high school, and it comes in a variety of different ways. And frankly, I think it's sometimes even worse as adults, because it's these long held cultural beliefs that run deep. Like, this shit runs deep. And we have to really look within, and you might have to try on a few different lifestyles and relationships on for size before you figure out what does feel good for you, or what it is that you are seeking most. But I think both of us very much agree that it still has to start from within. No matter what decision you're making about what kind of relationship you want, it has to start with the relationship with yourself. And that is not just a cliche. You have to do your own damn work. Whether you are in a relationship currently, or whether you aspire to be in a relationship, whatever type of relationship you want, whether you just want to cultivate more intimate relationships platonically, you still have to start inside. It has to come from within.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think that's too, that, so now we come to a point of conversion, I suppose. That's ultimately why I have the belief I have, because I think all of us listening, like, I love the person who did the marriage, the kids, the prom marriage kids, and the white picket fence and the caravan. Like, if you're listening to this and that's you,
yeah,
I love it.
Amazing.
Love that life. Good for you. And hopefully you chose it from a deep sense of, no, this is actually what I felt called to. This is where I grow. I love every aspect of this, despite the fact that it can be incredibly hard. That's ultimately what I'm saying. In that case, for that individual, hell yes. In fact, I think we're all envious of you in the same way that I'm envious of the person who did none of that, chased their dreams, and they sit down and someone says, why don't you have kids yet? And they look right at them and say, because I love my life and I choose not to do that because I don't think it speaks to me. But I'm so happy you've had your kids and you love that. And that ultimately, to me, is where we should be. It's like, just ask yourself. And even if you catch yourself, and I think this is the most important thing, I think most of us can go, wow, I can see where that choice, perhaps when I was young, was a choice made at a culture level, not my next level human level. I go, don't get upset about that. That's the whole point. That recognition is the whole point. And perhaps in that regard, that relationship that maybe you're not completely satisfied in anymore and or ended was the catalyst for you, perhaps the prodding, perhaps for you to get to that place. And maybe you still can hold both, to your point, where you will have the, quote, next level relationship. But I think if you hold it in that realm as something that's a cherry on top, something I want but don't need, you're going to be far happier with it if it comes around.
And we end on a note of agreement.
Yes, we do.
Love you.
Love you too.